Well, hello everyone and welcome back to Crosswires, the technology variety show. That is such a mouthful every time I say that phrase, the technology variety show. There we go. That covers all sorts of things, wired and wireless. And, you know, I'm just looking at my UniFi network app and you know, I am seeing a lot more connectivity than normal. Hang on a second. Jay?
Yes, hello.
Yes. Jay is literally in the house. Jay, so if you see the Squadcast, you'll see we aren't in the same room, and that's only because there's no way to do two separate tracks on Squadcast without being on two different machines.
Yeah,
that I'm aware of. And
what's fun is I'm James on his Mac, and I'm on my Steam Deck. So, like, Steam Decks are amazing Linux computers, I will say.
Yeah, brilliant. But Jay, obviously, we've had a fun few days. Jay's here for a little bit to visit.
Because somebody's turning the big 40 on Friday.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You mentioned him on literally every form of media that you can. Like, honestly. Anyway, Jay, look, we have guests, so we should probably introduce now. Returning to the show, to basically, if it's a networking episode, you can almost guarantee, or an Apple event, you can almost guarantee that Alex is going to be here. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm good, James. How are you doing?
I am really good. You know, I heard that you ventured up into my old neck of the woods. You were up in Yorkshire. Now, you've returned safely, I assume. So
yeah, I had a day trip up to Yorkshire to review a modified Land Rover. So there'll be a video on my YouTube channel at some point once I got that edited. But that was a good time. My first time to the Yorkshire Moors. Beautiful, absolutely amazing,
gorgeous. So, but you've returned without a flat cap or ferrets, so you were okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Alex, you do a show, one of your many podcasts called UI Chat.
Yeah, so yeah, it's good. It's a good. If you're after a podcast that's all about Ubiquiti and the world of networking, it's definitely a good show to check that out. So yeah,
and you don't do that alone. You've got a fantastic co-host who's very graciously agreed to join us today. So, Alex, since he's your co-host, do you want to introduce Evan?
Yeah, so Evan's agreed to join us on the Crosswires podcast today. So it's sort of, you got Crosswires and UI Chat sort of merged together today, which is quite nice. So welcome, Evan. How you doing?
Good. I will say, every time I hear the podcast name, I think it's user interface chat. UI Chat is actually, it's a podcast about Ubiquiti. So yes, me and Alex have done that for a couple months now, and I'm happy to be here.
And you run, is it McCann Tech as well? Is that the...
Yes. So the URL for my website is evanmccann.net. My very creative branding for that is McCann Tech, because that's very original. But yeah, so I write a lot about Ubiquiti and networking equipment there. And
I have to give just a little bit of a shout out, because when it seems almost whenever there's a new access point or UniFi device, Evan just does these beautifully written, detailed reviews and analysis of those devices. Like the new, as we record this, the latest UniFi device is the UniFi Express, right? And the detail you went into on that was just fantastic. Oh, there we go. Evan's got one.
Oh my gosh. I am literally waiting for one, because we had a job that we did, a UniFi job, and one of the things we did with the profits from that was we upgraded my network from an Eero to a UniFi. I'm just waiting on it to come in from from Ubiquiti now.
Yeah, because I think we're all UniFi powered on this episode, I believe.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm on it. In fact, I don't. You can. In fact, there you go. You can see it. There you go. Yep, I'm on UDR. UDR. Yeah. Which, fun fact,
I'm on the same UDR right now.
You're on a UDR as well. Yeah, that's true. You're on the same UDR. That's actually one Alex sold us. Which,
that's right.
Yeah.
And I just want to say again that UI Chat has been one that's given me fun info. I'm actually binging all the episodes, because now that I've started to learn UniFi gear, it's been fun going back and learning about all of the old stuff and like getting different perspectives. And just, again, great job always having a source for news, because my YouTube recommendations are all UniFi videos now.
Well, we should say, because UniFi, has UI Insider been around for a while?
No, it just recently started up again.
Yeah, the UI Insider videos, they did them once a month for a long time. They stopped randomly a while back, and then they released one called November, right at the very, very end of November, or the very start of December. It's just sort of like a very brief marketing overview of what they've done.
So it's nowhere near as deep as UI chat would get onto the actual sort of what real world experiences and.
Yeah, when I started the show, I started with Willie initially. I was never sure on whether there'd be enough news every month. And every month it proves us wrong. The show notes, I'd give a shout out to Evan. Evan does an impeccable job helping with the show notes every month. I put some stuff in there. I go back the next day and it's like twice the size. So it's a good collaborative effort for that one. But every month there's way more stuff than we can talk about. So it's if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely check out the show. But we talk about stuff for ages. So I think the last episode was just over an hour and 15 minutes or something stupid like that. So
one thing about UniFi and Ubiquiti gear is it's a little, I'd say, overwhelming and a little bit sometimes hard to figure out like what is different about this one versus that one. What's the best way? Because I know, Evan, you have a extensive spreadsheet of like different comparisons of different things, and I think from a consumer standpoint, for enterprise, it makes sense. I mean, there's always different options, but from a consumer, it is definitely a more confusing thing. It's one of the reasons why I didn't go with UniFi or Ubiquiti gear for a long time was I didn't think it was for me. And now that I'm looking back, I'm like, I could have been with UniFi for a lot longer. But I wonder, do you think Ubiquiti is going for both the enterprise and the consumer level now?
Definitely. And that's why I'm glad that they're doing those UI Insider videos. Yeah, like Alex said, they did those for a while, I think this summer, and then they stopped. But those are a nice little source of information and kind of give you kind of a quick little recap of what they've been doing recently. But yeah, it's very overwhelming, very confusing. This year in particular has been very busy with like new products, new software, and they love to rebrand things a lot. So you might find, like, I have articles that are a year or two old and they have like the old terminology. So it's like you might go to their website and not see that same product, or, might not see it described the same way. So it can be very intimidating to get into. But like once you have the product, like you have the UDR there, like once you kind of start using it, it's pretty intuitive. It's just kind of like from a research standpoint, or when you're trying to get into it, it's like, I don't know what parts I need. I don't know which products go with which, or how to get started. But that's what, we try to do with UI chat and all the YouTube videos that are out there, try to do.
And I've got to ask you a question here, Evan. When you're doing these comparisons, how annoyed do your family get that you're constantly changing out access points and routers, or are you a sensible tech person and you have it on its own thing that doesn't disrupt the family Wi-Fi?
I try to keep my maintenance windows to weekends and times when it won't be super disruptive. But yeah, there have been times when I get the angry knock on the door of, hey, why isn't the internet working? What's going on? But yeah, that's part of it.
I was watching a MacTelecom Network thing, and he goes up to his mom's house. I'm like, so your mom is getting all this gear, and I mean, I'm gonna guess she gets her internet network infrastructure changed out every single month, and she's like, Cody, how do I use this?
Well, the thing is, though, that's kind of one of the beauties. We should probably jump back a little bit and because we're saying some of the things that we love about UniFi, some of the things we find confusing. We probably, for people jumping in at this point thinking, what is UniFi? So I think let's just do a very quick overview now, because Alex made a really good point pre-show that people assume that UniFi is the name of the company, not the product line. So, Alex, can you give us, and Evan, obviously interchangeable as you want to, give us a bit of a high level, what on earth is UniFi?
So I think the reason that people get the two confused is because UniFi is essentially the Ubiquiti's iPhone. It's sort of their halo product, their thing that's made them famous in the more consumer grade stuff. But Ubiquiti dates back to 2006, and they've been doing stuff for the WISP industry for a very long time. So that's wireless internet service providers, fixed wireless, that sort of thing. So they've got a very, very broad product line, and UniFi is just one of those parts. As I mentioned, UniFi is essentially a product line. So again, like Apple's the company, iPhone is the product, Ubiquiti is the company, and then UniFi is the product line. But the reason I mentioned it is I think I see loads of YouTube videos out there which they just say, this new UniFi thing, or they refer to UniFi as the or like I think Tom Lawrence sometimes does it. It says, "Oh, UniFi has done this," or those sort of things. If you know what I mean. But yeah, I think it's simply because it's either it's such a poignant product for them. It's very, very popular for them. And yeah, I think that's the main reason.
Yeah, and Ubiquiti, the company, like Alex mentioned, they really got their start with wireless internet service providers like outdoor radios for long distance wireless networks, and then UniFi was kind of started as a side project of that, and then it's gotten to the point where UniFi is basically 90% of the company revenue wise. So now people kind of don't even think about Ubiquiti; they think of UniFi. Because UniFi isn't just networking. UniFi is also UniFi Protect for their security cameras, UniFi Access for their door locks. They have so many other parts that make up UniFi beyond just the network. So now it's almost like UniFi is a bigger brand name than Ubiquiti itself. And yeah, it's a lot of things, and that's why people kind of assume that's the company name, because it's just such a big part of what they do.
I will admit, I think I'm guilty of this. When we were doing our last job, me, Jay, and Zach were doing our last job, we didn't once mention Ubiquiti. We told the clients this is UniFi gear, which it is, but not once did we say the word Ubiquiti. Because that was a network, protect, and talk install all at the same time. It's not finished yet because clients like to delay doing the little bits of work that they're meant to do. Don't you just love clients? Yeah, but it's like, go on.
I think one of the things that kind of set me off from doing UniFi stuff for a long time was I remember listening to Marco talk about how he had to get a computer with Ethernet, or he had to do a flash drive, or he had to do all this complex things to get it up and running. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of breaking it, because I've bricked I have bricked Lynx's routers before. I've bricked Netgear routers before, and I'm like,
so that, Jay, is a really good point, because just for reference, for those who don't know who Jay's talking about, because I think, and I'm guilty of this, I will say the name Marco, or say Casey or Merlin, or maybe even sometimes Alex, and people won't know who on earth I'm talking about. But Marco Arment, who is one of our co-hosts of ATP. He's also the developer behind Overcast and various other apps. I think he used to work at Insta.
And he also is one of the founders of Instapaper and Tumblr.
That's right. Yeah. So really good guy. But I think, Evan and Alex, what Marco experiences trying to either self-host the network controller or use one of the old cloud keys. Now, that's somewhat of I say it's somewhat irrelevant now, but it's a lot easier, isn't it? Because UniFi needs some form of controller to work. Or am I wrong? Because I think, let me get.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you can run you can't run most stuff in standalone mode, can you?
Well, you can, yeah,
right.
But we can get into that, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So can you the controller? Because obviously there's effectively, for all intents and purposes, there's probably four ways I would say to do a UniFi controller. You've got the ones that are baked into the console itself, so a UDR, UniFi Dream Router, UniFi Express, UDM Pros.
Mm-hmm.
You've then got the dedicated cloud keys, and I think, have we got the 3 on the market at the moment? We've got the...
Yeah, there's the Cloud Key Gen 2, the Gen 2 Plus, and then the Enterprise.
That's right. And then you've then got self-hosted, which you can run on a Raspberry Pi or a True NAS box. And then you've got cloud-based controllers like, I don't know, UniFi have done one, but it's meh. And then you've got amazing things like Hostify. Look at Alex's face, just like, yeah, come on, well done.
Yeah, I actually was looking at Hostify, because that would be really, really cool to have.
So, but I mean, does that effectively sum up the ways you can run a UniFi controller right now?
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, to be clear, I mean, there's UniFi hardware, like you mentioned, the Dream Router, Dream Machine. There's the access points, the switches. And then, yeah, there's also the software that runs it. So, yeah, you're talking about all those options. Besides, like a very small use case, like if you have an access point or two, you can just use the mobile app in standalone mode. But if you want a full UniFi network, and especially once you start getting into like UniFi Protect for video cameras or UniFi Talk, Yeah, you pretty much want to have a controller, and it's one of those 4 options you just mentioned.
And that's, I think, the big thing. Whereas, say, for example, if you've got, okay, use a prime example, not all of my network, unfortunately, is UniFi. 2 of my switches are TP-Link. Now, they're smart switches, but nice enough switches. But to configure them, I have to go to each one individually and go to the web interface. Traditionally, that's what you'd have to do with, APs or things like Cisco. You'd have to be looking at maybe command line stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what sets UniFi apart? The really nice software-defined controller that really does. I mean, from my point of view, I've tried to configure other network environments, and I'm sure you both have as well. Do you think that's what sets UniFi apart? How easy it is to configure multiple devices?
Yeah, so UniFi's been around since 2013, and I think I'm right in saying it's probably one of the very first, if not like a very early iteration of what you call SDN, so software-defined networking. You are right. So, so networking hardware typically before that you'd have to log in. Well, it's still as right. It's got both sides of the coin have got their uses. So you have to log into every device manually. The software, each device runs its own software in a GUI, and well, maybe not sometimes. But where UniFi is different is that every device you've got, every little device that makes up part of the UniFi puzzle. So you've got AP switches, routers. To manage them day to day and set all the settings on them. Each device does not have its own GUI. So if you go into a web browser and type in the IP address, you're not going to get anything at all apart from UXG, which just says, "Yeah, I'm working." So you have to go into one pane of glass, and there are some people that don't like that. They like to be able to log into each device and configure it manually, that sort of thing. But when you've got a massive deployment, logging into one server, one thing, and setting all the VLANs you want manually, because the latest version of UniFi, which we can talk about in a bit, has made VLANs so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just one central place to log into to manage everything, and that could be like with Hostify, you can manage countless sites. That could be one in Australia, one in America, one in London. So you could have all around the world and manage all the different sites. So that is essentially what sets Ubiquiti apart. And obviously, since then, other competitors have come on. You've got Armada, TP-Link, you've got Cisco Meraki, which have been doing that sort of thing for a long time. So I think they have set the market towards that way, because it is nice to manage. So yeah.
And remote management, remote management is so powerful because the controller is still running. So say, for example, this UDR, it's still running locally, but because it's connected to my UniFi account, I can access it remotely without any open ports, right?
That's correct, yeah. And what makes that really nice is the fact that a lot of hardware now, and cameras as well, which makes me feel a bit icky, relies on the cloud. Everything you're doing has to go via a cloud server. And you have to open ports and do weird, shady stuff. Where Ubiquiti is different, and they are, to my knowledge, one of the ones that does it the best, is you don't have to open any ports. It also works behind NAT as well. And yes, there is a cloud server, so when Ubiquiti have an outage, their AWS servers go down. You will not be able to log into your stuff remotely anymore. But what the cloud is doing so the device, the cloud key, the router thing, will reach out to the cloud and say, James wants to log in from his phone in London, whatever, and it will negotiate the connection, give each party give each device the information, and then it will route you directly over the internet. So it will connect you directly, and that again works over 4G. It works over Starlink. So that's your data, specifically the cameras, which is the most important bit, is not going over the cloud, which is really, really good.
Yeah, because like one of our last clients used cloud cameras, and that was both an internet bandwidth cost, but also just it was slow to access stuff. And it's interesting. Like my current apartment, until I changed, is Eero. That can only be accessed on a app. And what's interesting is when your internet goes down, you can't access, even if you're on the local network, you can't access that interface if there's no connection to the cloud servers. Whereas with UniFi, what's interesting is you can access it. And even if you have no internet connection, our internet was down at our clients, and we were still able to access the console locally. And you can import and export. It's a really nice way to bridge that gap. Mm-hmm. And I'm also impressed at the configuration that you can migrate configuration, even the new shadow mode is
shadow
really
mode.
cool.
Is that
like
even
you can
out?
have
Is shadow mode out yet?
I think it's launched.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, it has.
yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
It came out in UniFi OS 3.2.7. I believe it just launched, I think, like last week,
Yeah.
but it was in beta for a while.
And for those who don't know, that is where you can have another device set up to copy the configuration from one device to the other one. There's still a manual changeover. You have to change over the WAN port from one to the other, but you can basically have a backup ready to go in case your one device fails. You can immediately have your configuration on another device, and everything is back up and running.
And it is because that's failover, that's redundancy. Do you would in an enterprise environment though? Would you have to swap the LAN cable? Would you just have two outputs from? I'm just curious how that would work in enterprise, because you could imagine the downtime that would cause having to go and flip a cable over.
Yeah, you could have basically like a switch in front. So if you have one or two internet providers, you have a switch to kind of distribute those connections.
Right.
And then, yeah, you could have, two going into each, UniFi Dream machine or whatever you have there.
So let's talk a little bit about then, because Jay's just brought up an excellent point, because there's been stuff that because again, as we mentioned, there's the software, and then there's the hardware. Now the routing side, and if you go back to I think Alex, was this our episode we did about consumer Wi-Fi with yourself, when we talked about how you consumer grade Wi-Fi router is far more than just an access point. It is.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think
at this point, I've recorded so many podcasts, I can't remember where I've talked about it.
Exactly. But the point is, the routing side, the taking your internet connection and routing it out to your network, shall we just be honest, up until, I'd say, the last year maybe, Ubiquiti's routing offering has maybe fallen short of things like pfSense.
Oh, it's always been.
Yeah.
UniFi started as switches and access points. I think the access points came out first and switches were shortly thereafter. And then they had the UniFi security gateway, the USG and the USG Pro. They were 2014, 2016, somewhere around there. And they were slow when they came out and pretty limited feature wise. But that was their dedicated, router, like plug into the internet, distribute your network, option. And yeah, their features for routing have always been pretty simple, especially for VPNs and like for me as a network engineer, when I look at the features they support, it's pretty good for a home, pretty good for a small business. For where I work, obviously it's, it doesn't have anywhere near the features that we would need to run our business network. And they've put in a lot of effort and development time into the hardware. So they have a lot more hardware options. But more importantly, I think this year was a big focus. They definitely spent a lot of time expanding their VPN options. They have the new traffic rules and traffic route system. They put a lot of effort, behind that to improve that. And it's both easy to use and a lot more powerful than it used to be. But it's still, even now with all of those things, and a bunch that I didn't mention, pfSense, OpenSense, any sort of quote unquote real, like I think of them as real firewalls or real routers. They just have so many more features, and UniFi definitely focuses more on the easy to use rather than every feature.
Right. Okay. And of course, UniFi's, network stuff plays nicely with, because a VLAN is a VLAN, right? So if you're needing to put VLANs out across switches or access points, they are just, as long as you get Nova VLAN numbers from your VLAN ID, from your pfSense box, it will work fine. But it is interesting because, so for example, like dual WAN wasn't a thing on most Ubiquiti routing gear, UniFi routing gear, until fairly recently.
No, so they're on the USG and USG Pro. They had dual WAN for a long time. Okay. They had a very simple, like, hey, if your internet goes out, switch over,
right.
Or hey, split it 50-50 between these two connections. They took a long time to get those features on the newer products, and it's still very simple. Like if you have multiple public IPs or you want to do advanced custom things, UniFi probably isn't the best choice, but It does do dual WAN failover, all that if you buy the right hardware.
So again, small business, home, the gateway devices. So again, the UDR, the UDM, the UniFi Express, and even the Dreamwall are okay. But again, if you want something more powerful, you've got a lot of complex stuff that you want from your firewall, maybe look elsewhere. Again, I mean, I'm a big fan of pfSense. I ran pfSense on an old Dell computer for ages before I got a UDR or got anything proper.
And I think one of the things that still surprised me on one aspect of Ubiquiti is the lack of a charge for like accessing the services, the cloud stuff. Because again, my Eero, a lot of things were on the router, and then over time they locked more things behind Eero Plus and Eero Secure. And like we were looking at options, and when we looked at things like some of the Cisco Meraki stuff, looking at the huge licensing fees, and I'm still kind of shocked, being like, I mean, we don't have to pay anything other than if we did like UniFi Talk installation, we'd have to pay for that. So it just surprises me that a lot of this stuff is not behind a subscription.
So you're talking about licensing costs for the hardware, which, I mean, was at least somewhat unheard of, right? Licensing was a big thing, particularly Cisco would love to license their hardware for support and updates, right?
I could talk about Cisco licenses for a long time, but nobody wants to hear that. But yeah, like going back slightly to like what sets UniFi apart, it's definitely what you just mentioned. It's the lack of license fees. So you just buy the hardware. You don't have to pay every year for, support. The downside of that is sometimes you don't get support.
Well, you say that, but so this happened, in the last month or so, professional support came along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for $100 a month, which you made a good point. In a enterprise setting, and if you didn't have an on-site support person, $100 a month is a write-off. I mean, in an enterprise setting, not in a small business.
Yep.
Now that leads me to a quick question, man, because obviously has everybody else loved the UniFi's recent ad campaign with Jack Quaid?
I didn't actually. I recognized him. I didn't actually know who it was. So yeah.
I just want to see a Lower Decks crossover.
Yes.
Where they're adding UniFi to the
Cerritos. Yes. Actually, you know what, UniFi, there we go. Someone tell UniFi we want a Lower Decks UniFi episode.
That would be amazing. Boimler, why did you take down the cloud console again? I'm sorry. I was just trying to update stuff.
But joking aside about Lower Decks, sorry, we should explain. Jack Quaid, who is the UniFi guy in the videos, is a brilliant actor. But for Star Trek fans, he is Bradford Boimler in Lower Decks. He's also, he's just a brilliant actor. He's in The Boys. I think he's in other stuff as well.
All right.
He's wonderful. But those ads, do you think they showcase the real difference with Ubiquiti, that it really is? Hey, even our site, what is it, Site Magic, the new, which I haven't tried yet because I don't own multiple UniFi devices, but we will be doing this when Jay gets her Express. If you have an account that owns a bunch of UniFi, does it have to be gateways? I guess it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I think it works for the UXG Pro, but it has to be adopted to either a cloud key or a cloud console. Unfortunately, I think we spoke about it on UI chat, it doesn't work with Hostify, it doesn't work with self-hosted because there's some sort of UI account magic going on behind the scenes.
Which makes sense, unfortunately, yeah, because that's a shame. But the idea is that you can, with like a couple of clicks, create VPNs between all your UniFi devices. And the joke they're making, of course, is, all the different sites arguing about which subnets we're on and, everything. I just love that ad. But so, do you think, okay, I'm just going to put this out there. Is anybody else getting a Mac versus PC vibe?
I was, with the white background and all that, it really felt like those old commercials.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the founder of Ubiquiti, Robert Pera, this is just a bit of behind the scenes. He started at Apple. He worked for them when they were making the airports.
Oh, wow.
So like the Airport Express. So he was there in like the early 2000s, and he left, I think, in 2005 or so to start Ubiquiti. So he has Apple DNA in him, and then you can very clearly see the influence in the packaging, the products, the white plastic, and now those ads. Yeah, definitely very Mac versus PC like, and they're great.
I'm glad that you bring up the airport, because that's something that I'm pretty impressed at. The apps like the Wi-Fi Man and the UniFi apps remind me a lot of the airport utilities. And again, the one thing that I like over airport is that you can access it from a web interface, but it's cool too that you can now access it on your phone and you can do all that you need to. I mean, there's very little that you can't do on your phone, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I mean, we don't, the one thing that frustrates me is we do not yet have a soft phone for UniFi Talk, but maybe this year? Maybe? I mean, we're nearly at the end of this year, so maybe not.
It was surprising me that how the UniFi Talk phones look so much like an iPhone. I'm just like, wow. I know they're running Android, but it's just really quite interesting. Like, this is an iPhone. And when I was telling the client, it was like, hey, it's just like an iPhone. It made it easy for them.
But yeah, no, they are beautiful. I mean, we've got so much we can unpack. So, because the networking side, let's just quickly talk, because the network app has just had a huge upgrade. Because the idea is that each part, so you've got the firmware on the devices, you've got the UniFi OS itself, which is like the top layer that manages all the apps that run on. So the UniFi OS, for example, runs on the Cloud Key, it runs on the UDR, but UniFi Network is the bit that controls all the Wi-Fi config, the network config. And Alex, VLANs, they're a tricky thing to maybe non-techies. I mean, you're both network engineers, so you probably understand them far better than we do anyway. But UniFi's implementation wasn't exactly network engineer friendly, was it?
No, so I learned VLANs at my old job at WISP, and thankfully I was thrown at the deep end and sort of over a matter of weeks on things, I'd shown exactly how they work, and obviously it sort of sticks with you. How VLANs are typically managed on, I say, proper networking gear, just in quotes, like Cisco stuff and edge routers. There's a particular way that VLANs are done. It's typically like a grid, and you have three different states for a VLAN. You have E, T, and U. So you have untagged, which is the native VLAN, is what it's called, a tag VLAN, and then you have the excluded, which is just saying no VLAN on this port. Up until 807 Unified Network, UniFi has always managed VLANs in a very weird way. I remember back when I got started using UniFi networking, I was getting started trying to do VLANs on UniFi. I was thinking, this is very weird, and I had to watch a Chris Sherwood video probably 5 times to work out, that's how it's done. You have to create these profiles and do weird things, and it takes ages. Thankfully, with the new version UniFi, they are probably 95% the way to making it exactly like an edge switch. But at a glance, you get the grid and you can see there's different colors for tagged and untagged. So at a glance, without having to spend your whole day clicking on different things, you can see where VLANs are being processed or being passed through the network, if that makes sense. Not quite this very simple 3 clicks to change VLAN state for each port, but it's very good nonetheless.
And of course, something we realised, Alex, and I think you already knew about, but I didn't, is that not all UniFi switches fully support VLAN tagging as one would have hoped. Fair warning, people, the Flex Mini does not support VLAN tagging that well, which has caused us a little bit of a problem. Alex, Evan, can you explain? The Flex Mini is a gorgeous little switch. Is it $25 still?
I think it's $29.
$29? I know it's £29, but I think it might be. Anyway, it's a sub £30, sub $30, 5-port, gigabit, managed, PoE powered or USB-C powered switch.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
It really is. But why can't it do? So basically, I think what we were trying to do is make it so that we could have some ports tagged, right? I think that was what we were trying. I can't quite remember what we were trying to do with it. It was something weird.
Yeah, it was something weird we were trying to do. I can't remember now.
Yeah, but it can't do it. It can't handle tagged VLAN management properly on the ports. Is that a hardware limitation then on that particular device?
Yes. So of the 30 or so UniFi switches, the Flex Mini is the smallest, and it has the most asterisks on like what it supports. So like out of the box, you can kind of use it as a dumb unmanaged switch, like a $20 TP-Link that you buy at a big box store, where it's just every port you plug in is the same network. The Flex Mini goes a little bit further. It does kind of support the basics of VLAN tagging. There's weird specifics there, but there are a lot of features that aren't supported on the Flex Mini, like spanning tree. That's an important part of switches and VLANs and tagging and everything that we're talking about here. And it makes sure that there's no loop in the network. So the Flex Mini doesn't support spanning tree. It doesn't support VLANs fully. There's a couple other features that it doesn't have just because it's so small and so limited.
Got you. But it is still, I mean, I think they're wonderful little switches for certain deployments. I mean,
Yeah.
Do you know what? I used them for a desk bank switch, if that makes sense. So where you've already segmented your VLAN at the core switch or the distribution switch. And then
I think of them at like sitting under a TV or like in an entertainment area. Like it's just kind of like, I think of them as like port multipliers. If you just have one cable and you need it to be 3 or 4, that's a perfect thing. You wouldn't want to run your entire network through that thing. It's more of like at the very edge of your network. You just need a couple of spare ports.
Absolutely. And I mean, Jay's getting 2 Flex Minis, but we're talking a very small apartment.
Yeah.
Where, again, they literally are just to extend to port multiply more than anything else. So
the one aspect that I'm looking forward to is being able to say, hey, give this device more priority, because sometimes it will give them, because I have currently dumb switches, and sometimes it will give one of them more priority than the other because it just doesn't know where you want the
because they're dumb.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because they have no clue.
And I'm looking forward to being able to be like,
clue
I want this to go here, I want that to go there. And what was actually pretty cool is seeing like all the things that like James has done, like segmenting off different ports for like one for like this going, only this device can access this VLAN, and like seeing that like we can close off ports at a client. It just really intrigues me.
Again, my management is so cool. Now, Evan just made a really good point, which I had forgot about, which is the ever-increasing line of UniFi switches. It's not exactly easy to choose a UniFi switch right now, is it?
No.
They did just make it better, I will say. I won't defend the glut of models, but they did, in their constant effort to rebrand everything, they did make things a bit more clear. So if you go to the store page, they have those categories. So they have like utility, standard, professional, enterprise. So at least they're kind of grouped, and they do have some filters. If you say, hey, I need 24 ports, what kind of switch can I get? But yes, choosing between, hey, do I want professional? Do I want enterprise? What does that give me? What do I need? It can be a bit overwhelming.
And it's down to things that might seem simple, but are important depending on what else you want to put on your network. If you want to put devices that need PoE++, which I think is something like a UniFi Flex switch.
The UniFi Flex switch is quite a nice switch. It can be powered by any type of PoE really, but depending on what you power with depends on the PoE budget for the devices you connect to it. So it can accept BT, which is plus at a maximum. But mainly the difference between the switches at the moment is either the speed of the Ethernet ports, either 1 gig or 2.5 gig, how many uplink or downlink SFP ports you have, then also the PoE budget, I think, as well. That's basically the main difference between the big boy switches anyway. So,
and then something we probably should quickly talk about in the hardware side, because I'm seeing a lot of stuff on TikTok at the moment. Well, not on I don't watch TikTok, but YouTube Shorts. Just got my Evo 7. It's amazing. Wi-Fi 7 is the only thing you should buy. Can someone please debunk this? Because most of UniFi's networking gear, including the UDR, including the UniFi Express, which we absolutely need to talk about, is Wi-Fi 6 at least. There's very little in the UniFi range at 6E. Does it matter? Seriously, help us debunk this.
I did a podcast with Bradley Chambers from 9 to 5 Mac as a guest of his, but as from host of, if that makes sense. One of his questions on that show was Wi-Fi 7, essentially. And the long story short is history will repeat itself. So for context, Wi-Fi 7 from the Wi-Fi Alliance as an official ratified standard has not yet been officially signed off.
Oh.
So if we look back to 2013, Wi-Fi 82.11 AC or Wi-Fi 5 as we call it now, there was stuff coming out at the time. There was devices and routers and things that came out that I think famously the Airport Extreme.
Yes.
That came out before before AC was signed off. And there was some features, I can't remember, it's deep in my brain somewhere, but there's some features that came later that those devices never ever supported. And we'll find that with Wi-Fi 7. I can't, again, off the top of my head, I can't remember all the improvements and all the stuff that goes with that with Wi-Fi 7. But yeah, I would hold off buying anything that hasn't officially been signed off. There is some FCC leaks of UniFi Wi-Fi 7 gear out there. I've seen recently, so they're obviously looking into it. But I would be very surprised if they bring anything out into market that hasn't officially been signed off yet by the Wi-Fi Alliance. So,
and of course, none of that multi-gigabit Wi-Fi doesn't matter if your internet connection, because most people will think, and again, it's something we talked about on the episode we did, this conflation that your internet speed, so your Wi-Fi speed equates to your internet speed.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, right?
That's my pet peeve. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, even broader than that, I mean, I could go, I mean, Alex kind of covered it, but yeah, there's some reservations about adopting Wi-Fi 7 specifically early and how the Wi-Fi standards work and all that. But even broader than that, it's just kind of like a classic early adopter problem for any technology. Like if you bought an electric car 10 years ago, it was way more expensive, way shorter range. All kinds of problems come with being the first one there. So Wi-Fi 7 is there right now. It's in the early adopter phase where TP-Link has equipment, Eero. I have a Mac 7 up there. But that stuff it's hideously expensive because only the most expensive parts. So you're paying a lot and getting a very little benefit right now. Next year, 2, 3, 4 years from now, probably Wi-Fi 7 will become that default where, if you're looking for new equipment, look for Wi-Fi 7 the way Wi-Fi 6 is now.
I think one thing that we need to look at is the fact of how much Wi-Fi has improved. I mean, for the most part, we don't think about Wi-Fi in the same regard, at least on a consumer level. I mean, think about how slow Wi-Fi used to be and how it was always a plug into Ethernet. Now it's like only if you're doing some of the stuff like podcasting or streaming and stuff like that where you need that stable connection. Or
if you're on an M2 Mac Mini or any form of Apple M2 chip right now.
Is that why my Wi-Fi was not working on the Bournemouth M2 busless?
Very funny. That's a very terrible inside joke. Just a quick aside, folks. Alex knows about this. Alex, I actually came back and tested it on UDR. Exact same problem. So the M2, it seems like there might be a Wi-Fi issue on M2 based Macs. Because
are we about to do some live troubleshooting here?
Well, maybe after the show. But I mean, basically, unless you guys have a solution, basically, I connect to it absolutely fine on this M2 Mac Mini. Connects fine, as in it'll authenticate. But then the ping times are into the thousands of milliseconds, whereas on Ethernet it's absolutely fine. But every other device is fine. Like literally, the Steam Deck that Jay's on. Actually, I mean she's hardwired, but everything else is fine. I'm the same with my parents on a Wi-Fi 5 bunch of decos. So in the end, I had to move one of the decos up to the room I was in and do a wireless bridge over the mesh, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think, and now what you're going to do is take a long Ethernet cord.
I'm taking a long Ethernet cord up to my parents this next time. But anyway, that by the side,
I think that's an interesting tangent. By the way, not tangent, a good segue. So one of the things that I think is changing the game, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I just got confirmation from Ubiquiti that it actually was delivered. They never sent me the up. So when I get back, I'm going to have UniFi Express. I think UniFi Express, I was looking at a UDR because James's UDR is amazing and I've been tempted by it. But for my setup, I'm the only person in my apartment, whereas here, there's two of us. The UniFi Express, when we saw that for $150 is a pretty cool thing. I think it has its limitations.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's actually. So, look, UniFi Express. Okay, let's start with what it is. Alex, this is possibly the. I mean, look, so Evan's got one. Let me hang on. Let me take another squad shot. Evan,
I cannot wait to get my hands on that. Not yours, but mine.
There you go. Oh, I hate the countdown here. Sorry, Evan. Give us a second. Because I don't do video. There you go. That's perfect. That's beautiful. Right.
My best Vanna White.
There you go. So this is possibly. I mean, you said this is. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is. It's smaller than the USG, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah. So I've got a USG here and a UXG. They're smaller than each other.
It's tiny.
Yeah, and then the UniFi Express is, if not exactly the same size as the UXG, so you just got that little screen on the front. And it is the UniFi Express goes in that category of devices. There we go. We got the lovely model today. UniFi Express goes in that category of devices where it's a cloud console. So what that means is it, like the UDI, it runs UniFi OS. It's a gateway, and it either has, well, depending on what device you get, it has Wi-Fi built in as well. So where the UniFi Express is a bit different, it is the first cloud console that can be, or UniFi OS console used to be called, just for reference, and they keep renaming stuff as Evan mentioned. It's quite infuriating. It's the first cloud console that can be have its identity changed. Essentially, you can have it an AP as a standalone access point on a table or something. It's like the replacement for like a Flex HD sort of thing.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
You can have it on the desk if you want it, and have it powered by USB-C. It doesn't have PoE. That's one thing that's missing from it, which isn't a massive issue, I don't think. Yeah, you can adopt it to another controller, just have it an access point, or you can run it as a OS console or cloud console, that sort of thing. So for an apartment like Jay's, where you've got a few devices, a few client devices, it's absolutely perfect for that sort of thing.
Yeah, because like I'm planning to replace my Eero and then have a Flex Mini on one side and the other side of my apartment.
Yep.
Because and pretty much run all that stuff off because it has a limit of, am I right, 5 devices in addition to the UniFi Express?
4, isn't it? Is it 4?
It's 5 minus 1. It has to manage itself.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
It can adopt up to 4 other switches, APs, other UniFi Express, 5 total, including the original.
Yeah.
And it can support quite a few clients. It just can't support, managing. And that's why I like, and I think one of the other things I was reading was that if you were going to be meshing on Wi-Fi, the speeds might be a little slower because it does not have a dedicated wireless backhaul. But
I don't think any. Do any Ubiquitis have a dedicated wireless backhaul channel? No.
Brands like Netgear Orbi, they dedicate one of their radios to communication between your 2 mesh nodes.
Mm-hmm.
All Ubiquiti APs, besides the U6 Enterprise, which has 3, it has a 2.4, 5, and a 6. But every other AP they make is dual band, and they don't do the thing where you dedicate a radio to backhaul. It just kind of switches between duty.
Because their whole thing is, in an ideal world, you are going to run their stuff as wired backhaul, right? But PoE. And now, is this the first UniFi access point that cannot be PoE powered?
No. If you count the Beacon HD, that covers a standard US outlet, that portrait thing, and then just slots over that nicely. I think other than that, everything else has been PoE.
The U6 and the U6 extender is the Wi-Fi 6 version of the Beacon HD. Yeah. Those two, for the most part, everything else is, plug an Ethernet cable, give it power.
Now, Chris Sherwood did make a really good point, and it's not. I've done this with other equipment, but you could technically PoE power it.
Yeah,
if you got a split of,
if you get a little, yeah, like it's powered by USB-C, so you could get one of those little splitters like he showed, and that's kind of a clever way to get around that.
There is one caveat to that: be careful, because I've seen this. In my case, it doesn't matter because the Ethernet ports on my 2 devices that I use this for are 100 megabits. But some of those splitters will drop down to 100 megabits on the data side.
Yeah, I was gonna do a video on this, and I'm still gonna do it. But the Ubiquiti make a little capsule thing which converts AF into USB, the UXG requires the UXG does. I'm not sure what the UniFi Express requires, but it requires 5 volts, 3 amps.
That's the same on
those,
it's the same on V. Yeah,
and those little adapter things do 2 amps. But I have noticed that the wattage usage of I think because of the Wi-Fi access point thing of the Express, the max wattage of the UXG Lite is a lot lower than the Express, so you might be okay. But
USB-C is so pardon my phrase, ubiquitous. Oh dear.
And
see what he did there?
Yeah.
Oh, I approve. As your fiance, I approve. See,
as a chief pun officer of cross wires, right?
And a few like other things about the Express. It can only run one UniFi application because like the UDR can run 2 or 3, 2. So and the UDM can like run 3 because like we have one running.
Run more than that. What's the UniFi? What's the UDM Pro limited to? It's not free.
It can run as many as you want. It can run network, talk, protect, access, inner space, that new thing they've got, and also UID as well. And connect,
Connect. We're only using 3J because our client doesn't need. I mean, I'd love them to have access, but they're not going to let us do access anytime soon.
That makes sense. And also, it does not have intrusion detection, but part of the caveat I was reading on is processing power, and this is a device that's going to give you the full output of a gigabit connection. So. And the intrusion detection would bring that down. Whereas if you plug this in, you will get the full gigabit connection if you have it available.
Yeah, Alex, can you because again, this is something that I'm experiencing when you do the UDR. I've got my inbound connection, which is down there, is a gigabit fiber, but the UDR, because I've got IDS and IPS on, it is maybe up to 600, 700. Can you explain what we're talking about again for people who maybe don't understand? What do we mean by IDS, IPS, and why? Why, A, is it something you might want to consider turning on? Why maybe doesn't it matter that it's not present on the UniFi Express?
Yeah, so intrusion detection and prevention, or protection? Whatever the P stands for, sorry. Prevention. IDS, IPS. Behind the scenes, that's a program called Suricata. That's a pretty well-known, I believe it's open source, networking software. And what it does is it tries to inspect traffic, coming in or going through your network for malware, basically bad traffic that will either is a sign that your device is infected or an attacker coming in. What makes that a little bit more nuanced and complicated is most things are encrypted. So like when you go to a normal website and it's HTTPS, that S means it's secure, which means it's encrypted. Suricata doesn't look at that traffic or can kind of look at it in a very limited way. So yes, it does protect you. For a typical home user doing typical internet stuff, it's not really 100% necessary. It's kind of an additional nice to have layer of security on top. The internet by the internet by default is pretty secure if you're, using it properly. Where it becomes more worth it would be if you have like a server in your home and you're exposing that to the internet. That's when those kind of features would be more relevant.
Because you're wanting to assess what's coming in over that open port and that open connection into...
Yes. So if you're allowing inbound traffic, you could have an intrusion that will be detected. For you just accessing Netflix or your bank website, that's outbound traffic. You're not allowing people in. So yes, they chose to just not include that with the Express because frankly, the CPU is so old and weak. It's like a dual core ARM A53.
It's quite an old chip. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Qualcomm's decision. So Qualcomm made the chip that Ubiquiti is putting in here, and Qualcomm gave it the Wi-Fi 6 radios. Qualcomm kind of put all of that package together and then kind of cut costs by just including only a dual core low power CPU. And it's totally fine for gigabit routing, totally fine for a couple VLANs, normal home use. It's just, it doesn't have the oomph for Suricata for IDS, IPS, which I believe they now have renamed to suspicious activity, I think is the setting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they just chose not to include that because, on the old USG and USG Pro, they did include it. And when you turned it on, and same thing with a Dream router that you have, when you turn it on, it limits your speed to whatever, 600, 700 megabits. And people complain. So they could have included on this press and knocked your speed down, and then people would complain. So I think they chose to not include it.
So then here's a genuine question, man. If I go and turn off suspicious activity on my Dream router, should the Dream router be able to route closer to gigabit?
I'd be curious. I've heard different things. I believe it should. And it also matters if you're talking about like inter-VLAN routing or out to the internet and back. But yes, it's my understanding it can do gigabit, like 930 megabits per second.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to complain at my 600 odd megabits connection up and down. No, it's really nice. But
especially as somebody with like 300, 500 down.
The thing is, you've got the same downstream as I do. You're just on DOCSIS cable, and this is a big problem for a lot of streamers. They're on DOCSIS cable, so the upstream is really low. It's ridiculously asynchronous.
That's why I want to give priority to my Mac using UniFi and stuff like that.
You can. So I don't think you can give priority, can you? But you can set speed limits on different devices, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. But and I think also part of it is looking at the cost factor. Again, I'm not trying to fangirl on any of this. I'm just trying to say, like, realistically, if you need some of the more advanced stuff, the UDR, at least last time I was checking, was about $200. So $50 more gets you more stuff. But in a lot of cases, the Express fits the need because, again, the UDR would be overkill for what I need.
You're not going to be running. You have. I mean, without doxing, you have security cameras, but we're not looking at you going UniFi Protect. You're going HomeKit.
I'm currently
video.
with a proprietary system with Homebridge. I'll say that, but I'm going to be going HomeKit at some point with those.
Because and this is maybe where. Let me just check our message. Make sure it's nothing. Oh, I know what it is. So this is maybe where we move away from the network stuff. Actually, before we do. Evan, you mentioned something on your analysis of the UniFi Express. Ubiquiti's other home product, Amplify. Do we think Amplify is going to no longer be amplified?
I mean, that's what I wrote, and that's kind of what I think. So yeah, Ubiquiti is the company, UniFi is the product. They also have two different branches. They have UISP, which is their, WISP, ISP, kind of professional products. And then, Amplify is kind of the forgotten stepchild that most people don't think of, but that's another line of Ubiquiti products, Amplify. The last one was 2019, the Amplify Alien. Right. And that's all the Amplify products are like mesh kits. So they're kind of like an Eero, Deco, Orbi, any of those brands where it's more you plug it in, use your smartphone to set it up in a couple minutes, and then you just kind of forget about it. So I think of like as appliances, you just plug it in, use it. The Express is kind of halfway in between what UniFi typically is, which can be big and complicated. And then it's almost trying to take UniFi and replace what Amplify is doing. So because we haven't seen new hardware in 4 years, and because the Express kind of duplicates what Amplify is for, I don't see a bright future for Amplify, but who knows?
Well, also, it might be quite a clever business decision because with Amplify, there's if you want more, there's nowhere really to go with it. And then like Jay mentioned earlier, UniFi, in comparison to those sort of systems, look quite daunting. Whereas if you give someone quite an affordable thing like a UniFi Express, it is very addictive. I've seen lots of things on Twitter and stuff about, oh, you want to go more and more and more, and I've definitely experienced that myself, and I've seen people saying the same thing. You give someone a UniFi Express, they run into the wall of 4 devices after a few years. Like, okay, I'm going to get UDM now, and then you like an iPhone and iMessage, you get a customer for life. So
yeah, well, and what's cool is like again, once I move in with James, I'll bring my Express with me, and we'll just add it to the network.
Yeah. Flex Minis come over.
Well, yeah, and that's you can't do that with your Dream Radar because that's this is the lowest end, cheapest, but it's also in some ways the most flexible because you couldn't repurpose your Dream Router as an access point, but you can repurpose the Express. So it's kind of like the best starter kit. That's what I think of it as.
And that was one of the things is like I don't want to buy things. I'm not trying to get into the weeds, but I didn't want to buy things for my apartment that I was going to have to sell again. And when we saw that you can repurpose it for the network, was like sold.
I mean, I have to admit that at some point, my parents' Deco M5s, they are Wi-Fi 5. At some point, they will give up the ghost, and as much as I'm trying to convince my father that it's time to run some Ethernet cables through the house and put some U6 in walls in, that's falling on deaf ears. So
I would, ATR, I'd be up for helping get them some UniFi Expresses, and we could then manage it.
But the thing is, that's the point. Probably the chances are that their 3 decos could actually turn into probably 2 UniFi Expresses.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But so we obviously very powerful for a home user. Do you think they sit in a, now this is me thinking here, and I'd love you two have far more experience. Obviously, no offense, Jay, I'm talking to Alex and Evan here.
No, you're good.
Small business, like a small coffee shop or a small office, do they seem to me to be at that price point for your cost-conscious small business user?
Yeah, I think so. I think coffee shop kind of thing, like local chain, local independent thing. They just want some guest Wi-Fi, because I haven't got UniFi Express yet. I'm sure it supports guest portal, that sort of thing. But yeah, that for that price point, I've come across those kind of people. They're not too sure about spending a couple £100 on some networking gear because they're not entirely sure of what value it brings them and that sort of thing. So I for a coffee shop or like a barber's or something, those like town kind of small shops and things, but they need some Wi-Fi, maybe some guest Wi-Fi for things, and then they haven't got an IT department from a chain, and yeah, you get what I mean. Perfect for that sort of thing. Maybe small business, maybe not sure. Might be right for that sort of thing. So
home office certainly.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, as somebody who before we did for the client, I also used to work for them as an employee, and a UniFi Express would have been at least an idea for a budget in some regards, and then we could have upgraded the network much easier in that regard.
But for them, because it's such a vast space, doing the we did obviously UDM Pro. Let's move away from the UniFi Express, because I do want to quickly talk a little bit about the other two. I'm going to say I want to really focus on things that I certainly have experienced, because we could talk so much about the other products, but UniFi Protect and UniFi Talk, because UniFi Talk's a bit of an interesting one for me and Alex, at least, because it's kind of launched. Has it actually gone ahead? Have we got UniFi Talk now in the UK? Is it actually launched, or has it been delayed again?
No, it launched in beta. We haven't talked about it on UI chat. I'm not sure if it's GA yet. It might be. Might be still beta. There's a few features missing. There's a few there's a few models missing. There's one model missing, I think. It's here in a limited capacity.
So UniFi Talk is another one of those things where I think UniFi, it doesn't have all the features of a full, like, is it free PB, free
3CX?
No, the one Chris Sherwood, free PBX, is it?
Yep, that's the one. Yep.
Chris Sherwood's the one he loves doing, and something maybe more, like a traditional, like Avaya or 3CX.
I've had experience in setting up and managing Avaya, and it definitely, I will say it's simpler in some regards. It doesn't have some of the advanced features of Avaya, because there's some things you can do with Avaya. But I will say, relatively, I like how much simpler it is than Avaya, because Avaya was pretty hard sometimes to understand where to go to do this, and I couldn't access that from a web browser because you wanted it secured. So I had to log into a certain server, download an app, do all this stuff. And I like with Talk that you can do a lot of the routing through the cloud console. Well,
that's the question. And so first of all, having it all on one easy to use platform, having it on a unified platform. But I think what I wanted to ask Evan and Alex about is that pricing for the subscription is ridiculously affordable. Was it $10 a month for a line?
Yeah, I thought it was £7.99 in the UK. When I looked at that, that's ex VAT.
Right, okay.
So it's actually £9.99 in the UK and $9.99 in the US. But yeah, that's, compared to what I've seen before, that's so cheap.
Really is. Well, Jay, can we share roughly how much we're going to be saving our client when we move
absolutely, because this one client, one of the decisions that was made at one point was to go with a cloud-based PBX system to not have to run an additional server and stuff like that. But that server over time instantly it went up.
The costs went up. You were paying for each internal phone line as well. Now there is a caveat to this, which we'll come to. But roughly, if our maths is right, we've saved them somewhere in the region of $250 to $300 a month.
Wow.
By going to UniFi Talk. Now, there is a caveat, Alex, isn't there? Which is that if you want the cheaper prices on the hardware, you for the subscription locked phones, you have to have a UniFi subscription for each locked device.
Yes, they've got hardware which are basically identical. They're just locked to either a subscription or not. And what that essentially means is that if you've got a locked device, it's quite a bit cheaper than an unlocked device. And you have to use it with a UniFi Talk subscription, as you said. And what that means is one number per phone.
Yeah.
Which in some small businesses...
That's okay, yeah.
Yeah, some small businesses, that wouldn't really work because they either have groups, ring groups, and shared numbers and that sort of thing. So they have an unlocked version as well, which you can either choose to use with a third-party SIP provider with UniFi Talk, which is quite a nice feature of UniFi Talk, to be honest. And also you can have ring groups and you can share one number with 10 different people if you want to, and have it route in different ways. So
yeah. Now, I remember, of course, we've got the ATA, which is definitely unlocked because, the ATA, because one of our clients, future clients, still needs fax machines. The ATA allows you to use a fax machine. Yes, I know, a fax machine with that. But Evan, have you done much with UniFi Talk at this point?
No, I was going to say I'll let Alex handle all the UniFi Talk questions. I have a bit of experience. I'm a network engineer, so I'm much more wireless switching, routing. I've played around with UniFi Talk, and I've unfortunately been responsible for a PBX before, so I can talk to how terrible and complicated and awful they are. But no, I mean UniFi Talk. To me, it's it's what Ubiquiti tries to do with all their UniFi products. It's make it simpler, make it cheaper, make it easy to use. You don't get 100% of every feature, but for the general small business or home use or whatever, it's usually a better option.
I'm impressed with phones are nice. In my opinion, I'd like to again. The only thing I think is missing right now, and certainly for our clients' uses, is a soft phone.
I will say I agree with something that Alex, you and Evan say on UI Chat is that it is a hobby project. It is still because there is definitely you have to ask yourself, are you okay with some of the things that are not there yet? It's definitely in its infancy in a lot of ways, but I'm still impressed. There are things like in the United States, you can verify your number. It can do I think it's Salt Shaker. I'm trying to remember what the protocol is in the United States.
I think Shake and Stir.
Shake and Stir. Yeah, and it has stuff for that. You even have SMS capability, which is pretty dang cool in that regard. Yeah.
We talked on the show before, like the Ubiquiti I remember is from like 2014, 2016, 2017, that weird era as we look back on it. They had a lot of stuff coming out at the time and they gave up on things and they didn't communicate very well. And they didn't communicate very well in certain things, but they communicated quite a lot in other aspects on the forums. They've definitely scaled back in terms of some of that communication recently, and it's a bit more opaque. But the benefit of whatever's happened at the company is the fact that certain things they're bringing out now are staying. They're sticking with it. Yes, some things may take longer to launch. The UXG Pro was one of those things that took ages to get anywhere, and it finally launched after 2 years, I think, on the EA store. So they are at least following through with some things, and what I mean by that is UniFi VoIP was the precursor to UniFi Talk, and that disappeared essentially. And these phones, I'm pointing down there because I've got some phones in boxes still. Those new phones are essentially the same hardware as the older ones, but with upgraded internals. And I've seen posted on the forums and somewhere else, I think on Reddit maybe, that they've got a new line of phones they're working on, which is really good to see. So yeah, as Jay mentioned, there's a lot of features that it may not have, but personally, I've never used a PBX before, and the first few minutes of looking around the software, like surprised how easy it was to look at how to set certain things up. The transcript thing works really well. The way you organize calls and do round robins and different things and set up extensions, and it's very nice and easy to get going. And I've got a lot of faith. I think in a year or two down the line, they'll be hopefully sort of making some other vendors a bit scared. So
absolutely. Yeah. And on those phones, by the way, you can access different apps, and one of the apps you can access on there is Protect.
That's right.
And I think that's a good segue into one of the other things on
I like it.
the UniFi
Ecosystem, yeah.
ecosystem is Protect.
Because I can just interrupt. We could talk about every other UniFi app. We could talk about Access, Inner Space, Identity Connect, but I don't think we're going to. I think what we'll do is focus on the last things we'll talk about, and we'll come back to general sort of how we think UniFi are doing, Jay, if that's all right. Let's, as you said, let's talk Protect, because our last install was a big UniFi. Well, I say big. How many cameras? 9 cameras, Jay.
9 cameras, yeah. Well, I have a experience with using Security Spy. I've experience with using a third party cloud system and even Ring cameras. So for Protect, what's cool about Protect is it runs on a UniFi hardware and it runs locally. You can access it from the cloud, and you can, and the data is saved to the hard drive of the device, right?
Or hard drives.
Hard drives.
If you've got it, because sorry, Jay. What's really cool is UniFi Protect. They seem to have done quite a good job at offering solutions to scale. So Jay's right; it's all local storage, but so you can run it on the CloudKey Gen 2 Plus, the UDR with a SD card, but I think it's only a couple of cameras on the UDR. It's like, yeah, it's not many. The UDM Pro and Pro SE, which have got. Does a Pro SE have internal SSD? I think it does.
The UDM SE, has 128 gig SSD, which you can use to do some Protect stuff. But how long that's going to last, if you've got to come with a couple of cameras, I don't know. So.
No, but you can put a drive in there. Can you put a 3.5-inch drive into a Dream Wall?
I think you can put no. Okay,
no.
So you would want, but then you've got the UNVR. And is it the UNVR Pro, which have RAID style?
Yeah,
they have the UNVR, which has 4 bays, and then the Pro, I think, has 7 bays. They both do RAID, and it's kind of just throw the drives in, it'll take care of it, kind of RAID.
Which is exactly what you want. You don't want to be configuring, having to worry about the storage. Just put the drives in, let it happen. But as Jay said, prime example of this store, right, Jay? They were using cloud cameras. Well, actually, no. Was it Security Spy?
Two different systems, and I'll explain.
Go for it.
The first one they were using was a Security Spy hosted on a Mac Mini, which was always, in my opinion, I hated it because of how slow it was to access the data, how often the things would mess up or upgrading stuff. Again, no offense to Security Spy, I just did not. It was the best thing I had at the time. But it was not. I did not love it. Then we moved to a proprietary cloud-based system on their security system. Again, not naming anything because I don't want to. No. But then that was limited. It didn't have real-time recording unless you bought a video system for the.
You had to buy a subscription for video recording, didn't you? You could do,
and you also had to buy some hardware, which we did test out that hardware. I used to be part of a beta test of the hardware there.
Okay,
but. That one was at least when you access the cameras, it was a lot faster. And then I've also utilized Ring at 2 other locations for different things. Actually, I've utilized Ring at 4 different locations.
And Ring is entirely cloud based again.
And it's also and the other thing about Ring, just a privacy thing. Amazon at any point can hand over Ring data to law enforcement, even if because if they know that in the United States there was a driveway that was recording a street, and Ring was able to get law enforcement to hand over someone else's video.
Other way around, law enforcement was able to get Ring to hand over,
and the person who owned that camera wasn't able to stop it because of the fact that Ring owned that data. So someone else but anyway, the reason I say that is because with this, your data is stored on premises, and what was fascinating by it was how it felt so native and fast using the compression stuff. When I'm accessing the cameras at this location, it felt like it was hosted in the cloud. I didn't see like the waiting to start. It was incredibly fast.
So so Alex and Evan, I mean, what are your takes on, because this is their second video product, right? What was it before UniFi Video? No,
it's their third actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Ooh.
Wow. All right.
Yep. Yeah, go on. So there's they had in the early days. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but they had something called Air Cam. So they have that Air Max, Air
Right.
I remember that one.
Fiber sort of thing. So they got Air Cam, and those are that's essentially the first generation of UniFi cameras, and those are the only generation of cameras that don't work currently with UniFi Protect. Because we go back to generation 2, you can actually use those cameras onwards with UniFi Protect currently. So you got Air Cam, which had a very dark GUI, very similar to UniFi network at the time. That got discontinued, and I'm not sure how much space there was in between UniFi Video and Air Cam, but we got UniFi Video, which was able to be hosted in the cloud, and Hostify in the early days, Riley did UniFi Video hosting for a period of time, which is quite cool. But then that got... we had 2 generations of cameras with that one, I think. We had G3 briefly, and then also G2, which is what we call... they're just G2 now. And then in 2019, I think, or the 2018, the end of one of those years, we had UniFi Protect, which was... Robert at the time. Robert Perra was more active on the community, and I remember I can find it somewhere. It's still live on the website. But he said at some point self-hosting will come down the line, but that never happened. And we're like 4 years down the line, and that's never happened. And it was supposed to be launched on the UniFi server, the XG server, also the original NVR, the little black NVR. That was supposed to have it as well, but it never happened. I like the fact that you can go all the way back to G2. There's old cameras, which I've got one in the cupboard somewhere, which I did test out. UniFi Protect seems a really good, now anyway, it seems a really, really good, stable product.
It's got machine... Now, is it on-device AI or is it cloud AI for the detections?
It's actually on-camera AI.
Wow. So all of that AI detection that are G5 bullets, and that's on camera?
Yep.
Which I like from a security and privacy standpoint, especially in the United States. We have a pretty tenuous relationship with the police, with the law enforcement. There's a whole stuff there.
That could be, but again, as with probably the switches, I don't know. Maybe there's no. Actually, I'd say the camera lineup needs to be fairly flexible. I mean, first of all, it is very impressive the configuration options. So we've got this client setup, and they will not mind us saying this. So 9 cameras. It was going to be a 6-camera system, and literally, was it the day of deployment, Jay? Yeah, the day of deployment.
It was the day of our first site where we were going over the final plans and starting stuff, but we were deploying the next day. But that day. It was the Friday before the Monday of going on site. The client said, actually, want more coverage, because we were using UniFi Design Center, which is another thing we can quickly mention, to show her where the projected coverage was. She's like, I want more. So literally on the first day on site, our installer, Zach, had to go to Micro Center because we didn't have time to get the cameras shipped from Ubiquiti to pick up, 3 more bullets. 3 more G5 bullets. 3 more cameras, yeah.
So... But the camera lineup, now, I guess a disadvantage of Protect, unlike, say, something like Synology Cloud Station, is you can only use Ubiquiti cameras. You can't use third parties, right? Yeah,
they've got a bit of lock-in for a good reason, I think. I think they got burnt with the UniFi Video time of the product line.
Right.
I think their support team at the time was less flushed out than it is now. And I think there were lots of... people running UniFi Video on servers that may not have been capable of it, and their support had to spend a lot of time troubleshooting that. So I think for a good reason they've kept it on their own hardware, they've kept their own cameras installed, and also because of that on-device AI, the cameras that would, or all the on-device motion detection, it just wouldn't happen otherwise.
So what? I mean, very quickly, without going into too much detail, Evan or Alex, do we think they've got the cameras covered? Because there's if you talk one generation, you've got let me get this right. You've got the Flex. Is it the Flex?
Yeah, you got the UniFi G3 Flex and G5 Flex, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the Bullet, you've got the Pro, you've got the AI, you've got the DSLR.
Yeah.
You've got the, if I had the budget, I would for sites. AI Theta really interests me right now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
And the one I would love it is like the doorbell. That one looks really nice for both the business and home use.
Yeah, they just expanded the doorbell lineup. They've got quite a few power options. You can power it from the SPAY connectors. You can power it from USB-C, either with Ethernet over USB-C, so data over USB-C if you want to, or via PoE, which is really good. And they've just added some new color options to the doorbell as well.
That's nice. I mean, we've got chimes, and it integrate. Is it now integrated into UniFi Access as well?
I don't believe the doorbell is, but Protect is. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is
wow,
really cool.
Did you know that? You probably knew this. You can stream the camera stuff to HDMI displays with their Viewport app.
Yeah, it's a little PoE powered dongle with a HDMI output. We use one of those here. Because the nature of the setup we've got here. But yeah, it's very good. It's had a few stability issues. Like the cameras have been laggy. You've had to restart it, but that's been fixed since. So,
and again, what's cool is I like the integration on the fact that like you can access it inside of the phone. And you both were mentioning it on UI chat that they've added access with UI access where you can see the camera, you can see like which ones are unlocked, different things like that. And have they added this yet? Can you unlock like a door from the doorbell camera?
I don't think integration between the doorbell and UniFi Access has been fully done yet. Yeah, if at all. So
because that is the thing that I've seen especially on some cloud-based security systems, and I think Ring has added that to their doorbells and lock system.
Yeah, so I think it was either in the last few years there was a very long-standing product in EA called the UniFi Door Lock. Essentially, what that's supposed to do is there's actually a fingerprint reader on the UniFi doorbell. It was mentioned once in a video, and then they've never mentioned it ever again.
Okay.
And I'd imagine what the plan for that was, which was to have a consumer version of UniFi Access essentially, but in the form of a fingerprint reader on the doorbell and the door lock. That door lock has never appeared anywhere since, so I'm not sure what's happening with that. So yeah.
I mean, look, we've got a good product line. One thing we certainly wanted to see and could not find a way to do without some clever, server in the middle automation was a way to integrate into third-party alarm systems because our client uses a third-party alarm. And one of the things they had is we had them set to notify on motion, but only when they were in. But the problem is only when they were away. But they were still getting notifications for the cleaners coming in because there's no way to say once the building alarm has been disabled, or as someone unauthorized uses in, to stop notifying. As far as I'm aware, there's no way to do that.
No.
That would be really cool to see.
Well, hey, if you get UniFi Access for your access control, then maybe 2 years from now they'll integrate those and it'll all work.
I mean, look, we would love to put UniFi. I mean, I will honestly, there's a site, the next client we're probably doing, I'd love to do UniFi Access because UniFi Access is, again, without getting too deep into access, UniFi taking their sort of approach to simplification to access control, right?
Well, one of the things that I like about access, one thing that I like that UniFi just recently added is the ability to add UI verify without having to have subscription because in some I know TLTP.
Oh, you mean UniFi Identity?
No, there's now called UI verify.
Oh, I see. Okay, yep.
Two different things.
And
so UniFi verify is the MFA or multi-factor authentication. So that's like you can log into your Ubiquiti account with that. That's UI verify. UniFi Identity is a separate identity management system. So it'd be like all your employees are listed out in that. And you could provision their VPN through that. Right. That is what just changed to become, it used to be only paid. Now they have a free, some limited features.
Yeah. Like with the one-click connect and stuff like that. And why I like the verify is because I like TLTP and stuff like that, but it's in some regards getting some people to go to TLTP. At least you can do a install verify, add it to your UI account. You at least have some form of MFA. And one last thing I wanted to bring up again, it's circling back a little bit, but it's just really cool. The the adding of like PPSK and stuff like that. That's again a
okay, yeah, that's where. Actually, I've got to say, PPPSK is such a cool idea. Private pre-shared keys. The idea is you can have one Wi-Fi SSD, but input a different password to join different networks, right? And we've seen it on other devices, consumer grade. I think Plume Wi-Fi in the UK did that quite a bit. That was one of their selling points. And I know Alta Labs are doing it. Now, theirs is a little bit more advanced, isn't it, than what UniFi are currently offering on PPSK?
Omada has it too.
Oh, Armada has it too. Okay, cool. Which is TP Links.
So yeah, it's private pre-shared keys. It would be like, I think of it for like a hotel if you're trying to sell like tiers of internet subscription.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Something I know Alta Labs is a pretty advanced, and I think Omada, I haven't played around with it, but I think theirs is a little bit more. UniFi's is fairly basic. I don't know exactly. I think you can tie it to a network. So like you could have a different password for a different network. I don't know if you can apply a speed limit to or not. That's what like the more advanced.
No, you got, because I've tried that. No, you can't. But I would imagine, can you not apply the speed limit at the network level via traffic routing? You could do it that way, couldn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
and
You can do it in other ways.
Yeah.
and like one thing I would love to see with change with PPSK is seeing like what devices, which key they're on, because one issue is if you have things like people sharing passwords and stuff like that. Like
yeah, that's a problem.
Or if like iCloud keychain, you have different devices, it can log in there. But it's at least a good way to not have like a million different SSID, because there's an SSID limit on certain devices. It's nice not to have that.
It is really nice. I'm very much aware of time, so I think what would be good. Let's start wrapping up. What I'd love to ask Evan and Alex is, at the moment, do we think right now that UniFi, to me at least, as someone new to the ecosystem, they seem to be in a really good place right now, better than I've maybe seen them in the last couple of years. But I'd love your takes as more, professional, and obviously as two guys who run a UniFi podcast. What kind of people give a scorecard for companies. Like, I think, is it Six Colors do a scorecard for Apple? And we'll start in reverse order. Evan, what do you think Ubiquiti's UniFi lineup should score right now, if we're giving it a letter grade?
Yeah, knowing me, I'd spend 2 days writing a big long thing that has too many details. On the spot though, like it's hard to give it one grade. I think this year, 2023, has been really impressive in a lot of ways. The new hardware, like the UniFi Express that we talked about, the new VPN options, they rolled out like WireGuard support. I think Teleport was this year, last year, PPSK, Site Magic, the new VLAN manager. Like they're really, in my mind, doing a lot of great work on the software side and on the like delivering features people actually want and can use. So I try to, I'm definitely biased in the fact that I've been following this company for so long. I've a website that's largely dedicated to them. It's been a lot of my personal and professional career to kind of follow this company and understand it. But yeah, I trying to put the bias aside, I still think they're in the best, they're the leader in this area for a reason. TP-Link Omada is probably the closest relevant competitor. Aruba Instant On is kind of a little bit more limited. Alta Labs is starting out. Cisco Meraki is there if you want to pay for a subscription, and there's other, a variety of competitors all around, but nobody really does what they do, where they have it all together. They have the most, probably the largest community, which I think is a big part of it. A lot of people write and make videos about these products. A lot of people care about them. So there's, a lot of effort going into it from the users and from the company. And I really think that they're in a good spot for, upcoming year. So yeah, I would say B plus if I have to give it a grade. I don't know. I'm always going to find things to complain about. Me as a network engineer, I'm looking down and saying, oh, it can't do X, Y, Z. That's what a lot of people like to do is, a lot of people complain about the UniFi Express. Hey, it doesn't do IDS, IPS. Hey, it only has a single gigabit WAN port.
Right.
It's very easy to find those limits, but I think when you look at what's there, I think no one does what they do better.
I like that. It's also very I also somehow thinking of A Spy Who Loved Me, or no, The Wi-Fi Who Loved Me. There you go. So, no, don't know. That is not the episode title, The Wi-Fi Who Loved Me. No, that's not.
Come on, please.
No.
It's fitting.
I like it could be.
As communications director for Crossfires, I'm going to put my foot down and say,
okay, fine. You'll be The Wi-Fi Who Loved Me. Okay. Thank you, Evan. And obviously, folks, we'll make sure we do closing plugs, but as Evan said, he could sit down and write 2 pages. Detailed analysis. Go and check out his reviews on this stuff. It's really impressive, because I find myself reading them like even before I knew of UI Chat. I've read your UniFi reviews when I was looking at access points for a previous job. So thank you for those, Alex. You've obviously got a bit of an interesting hat because, of course, you work for Hostify.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got a bit of a you want them to keep releasing stuff that can be added into Hostify, right? So how are you feeling, like both as a non-Hostify employee and as a Hostify employee?
Well, like Evan as well, I agree with pretty much everything he said, to be honest, about the score and what they've done in the last year. But me and Evan have a very similar background as well. We both worked at Hostify at one point, and we also used to work at a Wisp as well. So we're very similar in that aspect. Because I've been working with Ubiquiti for such a long time, it was almost 10 years now. Just aware of what they do. I've got sort of I've got a bit more of. There's obviously a lot more history than's gone in recently with UniFi. There's obviously all the AirMac stuff, all the AirFiber stuff they've done, all the Wisp bits and pieces. So, I think lately they've focused on UniFi a bit more than anything else, which is a really sensible business decision because the market has probably saturated for Wisp stuff. The people are going to be ripping out stuff not very often anymore, and replacing it, and potentially the Wisp market is going down a little bit because fiber saturation is more up. But I think it's in terms of UniFi, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's good that they're not giving up on stuff. As I mentioned earlier, there's aspects of their history where they just drop things for no reason. I'll mention the UI Glenn on the forums. He's very helpful in terms of getting people the support they need, and I've used him once or twice to certain support queries, and they've got back to me very quickly. So that's kind of things improved, and the fact they're doing paid support is good for certain types of people. But as Evan mentioned with UniFi Express, I think with anything you find in day-to-day life, I think people just find a reason to whinge about it.
People like to complain. It is a given, especially in the tech circles, right? We just like to complain about stuff.
Oh yeah, and again, the Express, what excites me the most, again, not fangirling, is how much it reminds me of the Airport Express and the Airport Extremes and all that. And I deployed that at a few locations because it was the easiest. I know it wasn't the best, but it
worked. And the one thing UniFi could add to the Express, give it an audio output and support. They'd make it. They'd get hammered if they did that. I'd be like, what have you done? Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked so much. As someone who's relatively new to UniFi, I'm really enjoying not having to learn a command line. Now, the final question I want to ask you both before we wrap up: certifications for UniFi. Because you hear so much about, if you want this role, you must have your Cisco CCNA or equivalent. There are UniFi certificates. UniFi wireless engineer? Is that the...
Something along those lines. You can get a certification for the UniFi stuff. You can get one for AirMacs as well. I did one ages ago for that thing.
And so the question then is it as valuable to have as something like a CCNA? I mean... I don't. Do either of you hold your CCNAs out of interest?
No.
My CCNA is slightly expired. With those UniFi certs, I haven't taken one, so I can't say for sure. I think the value of a CCNA is Cisco's name and what that communicates to your employer. It's like, hey, I have got, I know these things.
Right.
So I would say unless it's like a passion of yours and you just want to learn more about, or your company is very heavy into Ubiquiti products and there's a reason for you to do that training, I'm sure they're valuable for certain people, but I don't think it's going to be like a, whoa, look at this resume, he's got a Ubiquiti certification. But they definitely do have their use if it's, relevant to you.
And there's plenty of amazing resources. I mean, obviously from yourselves, of course, we could spend another half an hour just listing Ubiquiti UniFi creators. I mean, I think it's fair to just give a quick shout out to Cody and to Chris, who do fantastic. And of course, Willie. We probably should, given he did co-host UI Chat with you for a little bit, we should probably shout, and Willie's videos are great as well.
Yeah.
What I also love is, again, it's one of those things where I think with tech podcasts, or at least in our sort of field of tech podcasting, and maybe particularly in the UniFi space, there doesn't seem to be this rivalry. Like, you can have a really good conversation with Tom Lawrence or with Cody without feeling that you're stepping on each other's toes in content, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because everyone's take is a little bit different.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, and not just them. Like, I was just going to say real quick, because we haven't gone long enough.
Go for it.
I was going to say that also extends to the user community, because I've been, they have the community forums. I'm pretty active in the Ubiquiti subreddit. So yeah, there's a lot of really great people that write and make videos about Ubiquiti, but there's also a lot of great users that are there to help you, because either they are confused just like you are, or at least they've gone through it and can answer those questions.
The Discord's great. The UniFi Discord's so good.
Because on the Discord, we had an issue with one of our things, and we went to somebody on the Discord, and they helped us troubleshoot things.
Oh,
They had the exact same scenario.
Genuinely, this guy, gentleman, I do apologize, I forgot his name, was having problems figuring out how to do call transfers on UniFi Talk on the ATA, because it's not documented.
Yeah, you're not going to find documentation for just about anything.
And in the end, we figured it out, and I actually was like, oh yeah, we finally figured it out now. Because we all came together. I think, Alex, I told you how to do it. And then, yeah, so there we go. We're all learning. All right. We'll wrap up, because as Evan said, we've been going quite long enough.
Well, and I think we need to wrap up, because the voucher for our guest portal is expiring.
Actually, final thought, UniFi's guest portal, I do love how easy it is to do a really cheesy design. I love how simple it is. I love how it integrates into stuff. I'm really impressed with that. And
can I mention?
Yeah, go on.
How I did not at my church. I did not realize they were running on UniFi. I had been working in their sound booth since May, and I did not realize that there was a UniFi AP
access
right
point
in front of me.
The best bit, though, is when Jay went into Wi-Fi Man to do a speed test, because they put the staff network, they hadn't put the staff network onto its own VLAN. She discovered all of the UniFi devices.
I know of all the UI devices, and there's so many amazing things.
It's great. Anyway, wrapping up, any final thoughts from Evan or from Alex?
I think thanks to Jay and James for having us on the show. It's been good to talk about all this stuff. And yeah, check out UI Chat for other bits and pieces. But yeah, thank you both for having us on the show.
Oh, absolute pleasure. It's been a great discussion. Alex, obviously people know where to find you for most stuff. So the interface.uk for your tech content. UI Chat is on the Interface website, I assume, and in Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, if you go to the interface.uk/podcasts, you'll get a list of all the shows that I and we do, and they're in video if you want to look at our faces for an hour and a half for some reason.
Yeah.
You can do that.
That's why we don't record video. No one wants to see my face for any longer than about 5 minutes.
I do.
Oh, thanks, Jay. Cheers. Evan, what about yourself? Obviously, was it Evan? I'm going to get your website wrong, so you tell us where can people find your amazing analyses of analysis, your amazing articles about UniFi gear. Yeah.
Funny enough, I do own McCanntech.net. That just redirects. So my website is evanmccann.net. It's a little bit clumsy, but that's just my name. Also, if you just search UniFi, and you might find me that way. But yeah, thank you for having us on, and we'll be on UI Chat here soon to talk about latest news, and I'll be reviewing the Express here soon, hopefully as well. So,
is there a little bit of jealousy between you two that Evan's got the Express first?
No, not really. No.
Alex is saying that with an absolute straight face.
I mean, I'm definitely jealous, but then I'm going to have one when I get home.
Yes, yeah. I'm not, because I'm quite happy with my UDR. For at least for now, I'm gonna go and turn off I want to see if I can get full gigabit. I'm that sad of a speed freak that I want to see if I get full gigabit. Anyway, with that, Jay, thank you so much for your contributions and for being willing to spend our money and buy UniFi gear.
Absolutely. Hey, it's fun. It's fun having access to all these things and seeing all these systems. It's fun when, I will say, as Evan said, it can get addictive, and when you see all of the devices starting to pop up inside of your UniFi app, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, it was so much fun seeing, as we were doing that last job, seeing everything start to add to the UniFi Apple, like new device ready to deploy, new device ready to deploy, like to adopt, rather. Sorry,
topology. There are some networks I would love to see in their topology reports because it's so cool to see like the millions of devices they have.
Yeah. And with that, Jay drooling about other people's networks, we will wrap out and go to the intro.
My network is bigger than yours.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Crosswires. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please drop us a note over to podcast@crosswires.net. Why not come and join our Discord community over at crosswires.net/Discord. We've got lots of text channels, we've even got voice channels, and we've got forum posts for every episode that we put out there. If you're a Mastodon, you can also follow us either by heading over to wires.social or just follow crossed@wires.social.
If you'd like to check out more of our content, head on over to crossedwires.net/YouTube for all our videos, and keep an eye on our Twitch channel at crossedwires.net/live for our upcoming streams.
If you like what you heard, please do drop a review in your podcast directory of choice. It really does help spread the word about the show.
And of course, if you can spare even the smallest amount of financial support, we'd be incredibly grateful. And you can support us at ko-fi.com/crossedwires. That is ko-fi.com/crossedwires.
Until next time, thanks for listening.